Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. I'm Nina Rosner, and I'm with Kyle Hargrove, the licensed professional counselor. He's actually our favorite. And we're going to be digging into a topic today: what to do when a closed mind is keeping your marriage stuck. Before we dive in too deeply, though, I want to bring you over to greaterimpact.org, where you can take our marriage assessment and figure out if you should be doing coaching with us or if your marriage needs some help. Now, to our topic, a lot of times we'll have a conversation with both sides of the couple separately. And I usually know what I can work with. And one characteristic just keeps it. I mean, there's a few others, but there's one that I just am like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. And it's a very, very closed mind. And it's a victim's mindset, where you're not just closed, but you're also the victim of your spouse. And there's like literally nothing I can do to move you out of that space with an opportunity. You ever deal with anybody like that, Kyle?
Never, never, not once.
You're hilarious. So I'm gonna take that as, yeah, it's happened.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it happens. Uh, that's an everyday thing for folks like you and I. And uh, it has to do with the people that we work with. And I guess if all of our people are perfect and it's still an everyday thing, that means it's us. Um, but
Well, I'm not labeling the whole person. With the people that I work with, that's not the entirety of who they are,
yeah,
right? There's some like we've decided that there's enough openness that we can go do something. But there are people that are so 100%, this is 100% my spouse's fault. Like they won't accept any ownership over anything. Like you've never been harsh. Well, they deserved it and they caused me. And it's like they're not puppet masters. Like, how do you own the fact that you were harsh? Well, that's not my fault. Like, I shouldn't have had to be that way. It's like,
it had
yeah,
to be that way. Yeah.
yeah, they made me that way. It's like, ah, hmm, right?
Yeah. And you want to say, without crushing their spirit, so you can't. So you're so weak that the things other people do direct you to do what you do. You don't have the strength to do what you know would be productive or that you know to be right. But you misbehave and then you blame them for it.
Right.
And if you say that to somebody, you are, they're likely to get up and leave. So you it's hard sometimes to find ways to say those types of things in ways that are palatable to the person that has to hear it.
Yeah.
But you've got to step on toes sometimes or you're not going to affect change. So it's the closed mind that considers itself the most open a
Hold
lot
up.
of the time.
Stop the car here for a second. What?
What?
Yeah, it was. Tell me more about that.
A closed minded person perceives themselves as very open minded. And the problem is that they don't understand what it means to be open minded.
Hmm.
They think that becoming educated about somebody or something is being open minded, and it's not. They think that hearing somebody out who's on the other side of an argument is being open minded, and it's not. There are a lot of different behaviors that people take on that to themselves say, look at me, I'm open minded.
Mhm.
I look at a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now, where a lot of people and a lot of Americans are saying we have to be open minded to the wants and the desires and the needs of everybody. And then what that means is we have to accept anything, any behavior, any social construct that someone brings along. If we have to accept that, that means we don't believe in anything. We stand for nothing if everything is okay.
Mhm.
All right, that may be a little preachy, but to get back to what it means to be truly open-minded is actually, one of these things. Concept, simple. In theory, easy schmeezy lemon squeezy. But when it comes to applying it, it's hard. It's not natural. It's not the human thing to do. And the difference between being closed-minded and open-minded is the open-minded person is willing to change their mind.
Mm.
And when it comes to couples, that means they're willing to change their mind not only about the other person, but sometimes about themselves.
Yeah.
And if I'm in a dyad in counseling saying, well, I'm willing to accept some things and change my mind about what is acceptable with you, but you got to adapt around me. That's not going to get it done. So the willingness to change my mind and say, I could be completely in the dark about this.
That right there.
Change my mind.
Yeah.
And how many of us go into, look for help with a professional or with somebody that we trust and say that with honesty.
Right.
Change my mind. I'm willing to change my mind, but I need you to do it for me. Help me do that. How many of us do that because we're mad, we're hurt, we're frustrated, and we want that to go away? And I think most of us are going to say the only way that's going to go away is if I get my way.
Oh, goodness. That right there. Yes. And I have been this. Like when I was at a really hard place in my own marriage years ago, I remember blaming my spouse and thinking I was right about so many things. And the Lord was like, yeah, let me know when you can be humble. Oh man. And that was probably the biggest thing I had to learn about myself, and that was that I wasn't humble. I wasn't open to the Lord. I had some misperceptions, misconceived notions around what it meant to be married, do marriage, be sacrificial, all of those things. And I had a ton of resentment and judgment and hurt. And that was just driving the car, you know. That was Jesus was not, the Jesus take the wheel thing, like that wasn't happening. It was not a thing. Um,
Jesus got up in the trunk.
yeah, Jesus was like, I got out at the last stop, because you weren't listening to me anyway. So have at it. Romans, whatever verse that is, where he gives you over. So in that space in my head, it wasn't useful, or my heart, it wasn't useful to the relationship. And I thought I knew. That was the biggest thing, is I thought I knew, and I didn't know what to do other than what I'd been doing. And instead of going, well, that means that there's something for you to learn, I was arrogant about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear this from clients all the time, and I see it for what it is, and it makes me a little crazy sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with the person I was like years ago. Of course, you don't know what to do. If you did, you'd be doing it. But that's what's true here. You don't know what to do.
Right.
That's what's happening.
And my one of the things my dad taught me early on, and he's way older than Dr. Phil, um, was that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Hmm.
And I think that is so appropriate for what you just said. You didn't realize you needed to learn.
Right.
And to realize that we need to learn requires humility.
Yep.
And and so to get to that place, rarely have I ever worked with a couple who both came in plug and play, humility at the ready already.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Sometimes we've gotten to that spot with
Hmm.
both people,
Yeah.
but rarely is it that way at the beginning because of the emotion involved and the
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah.
So
Well, and honestly, there's people that are 3 weeks or 3 months away from having some humble heart. And then there's people that are like 3 years away from that.
Yeah.
Like they got their heels dug in so hard. And all I need is a little bit of humble of, I have a couple that's coming to the marriage intensive that the first time we talked about it, a year before I signed them up, um, one of the spouses was just like, well, my spouse needs to lose weight. And I'm like, well, we're not a weight loss. Like we're not a gym. Like that's not what we do. What do you see from your side? Like I asked the question like 28 different ways to get this person to see that they had contributed to something or that there was opportunity. They wouldn't do it. And I'm like, so, all the questions that you ask, what would you like different? Well, my spouse needs to be thinner. Like they're just too fat. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to do this
Yeah.
because there was
And if we
nothing.
were, the next question would be, what are you doing to contribute to the trauma? That needs to stop as well.
I know, right? Like,
Because that's gonna fly.
people.
Yes.
Yeah. And then finally, later, a year or plus later, different conversation, different time, and different awareness and a humble attitude. I'm not super kind. Okay, tell me more about that. There's no judgment here. Like, but what do you mean by that? And I suppose it could be, X, Y, and Z a little bit different. Even just something that small. That's like, okay, the Holy Spirit is in you somewhere there. Like, good job. But if there's none of that, then I just don't have the skill set. Like it's the Holy Spirit saying, not now,
Yeah.
because I can't make somebody be different in their head. I can help them see something sometimes if they're open, right? But that goes back to what you're talking about with open. Yeah, I think it would be useful, I think, to have a definition of what does it mean to be open-minded. And if I heard you properly, you said you need to be humble.
Mhm. Willing to accept the possibility that
Mm,
you may not have the best answer. You may not be right.
hmm
And for some of us, being right is so critically unimportant that we'd let the world burn behind us
Uh-huh.
in order that it was established that I was right.
Yep. Yep. I had another person that I turned away and I said they said, well, why aren't you taking us? And then I said, well, it seems like you're more interested in being right than working on what God has for you.
Mhm.
And I've tried 15 ways a Sunday to see if there's any humble heart in you whatsoever. And all I'm hearing is your pride and how your wife is wrong all the time about everything everywhere. I can't work with that. I can't help you. And I'm not going to let you blow up my group.
Yeah.
And then I got blasted and I was like, okay, you could see, and this right here is what we're talking about. So I will pray for you because that right there is the evidence of a lack of Holy Spirit rule in your heart.
Yeah.
You haven't hurt me here, but that people don't do this thing that you just did to other people. That's just not cool.
Mhm.
And then I said, I'm gonna pray for you now. I lit up heaven's gates. I just stormed the gates for that person. It was just felt so bad for them that they were, and it literally didn't hurt, right? Because it
Right. Were they still there when you opened your eyes?
yeah, well, I did it on the phone. Most of
No,
the time
okay.
on the phone. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
so,
they got prayed for whether they were there to listen to it or not. So,
yeah.
one of the things that, as we're having this discussion, that comes to mind as a factor in people being closed-minded and not growing as a result,
Mhm.
and sometimes stunting their partner as well from
Yep.
experiencing growth because we got to deal with all this other garbage and we can't be free to do it. Um, I think it is a roadblock that more than not of us have. I think there are fewer of us who accept and sometimes even desire change than not. Most people want things to stay the way they are, What they don't understand is that growth is the result of change.
Mhm.
And if you refuse to accept change on the part of somebody else or for yourself, you're not going to see it. So saying, well, I'm stubborn that way. I'm stuck in my ways and that's the way I am. And y'all just have to deal with it. Uh, that's one I can't get past. There has to be some humility and, the kind of change that involves humility
Mhm.
for us to get past that. And until they do, we're stuck.
Right.
We're stuck until somebody is willing to say, okay, change would be all right.
Mhm.
I don't want to, I don't like it, but I realize it has to happen. So give me your best shot. Well, I have a foot in the door. We're still not free flowing, but at least we have a place to start.
Yeah. I think
So a
oh,
lot
go
of
ahead.
places are going to just experience stagnation. And I don't think there's anybody that would disagree that stagnation over a period of time begins to all slide backward. So there's
Mhm.
no progress once stagnation is in place. There's no growth.
What is it? What's at the core of this? Well, this is just the way I am. Yeah, I've had a number of people I know like that, a couple of potential clients. I don't bring them in the group. I did that once and I'll never do it again. It's too much work. And you spend all your time catering to the argument that they bring.
Yeah.
It's destructive. But even in the place where the entire adult family, all of the children and the wife have had this intervention where they sit the other spouse down and they say, look, we're all noticing these things, and you're not going to be around your grandchildren unless they change. Like, we love you. They do this intervention thing, and the other person is just like, yeah, you're lost. I am the way I am. If you can't love me like I am, and it's like, it's not that we don't love you. We're saying that we're limiting our kids' exposure to you because of how you act when we're here, and we don't want that. Well, it's just tough, that like what is underneath that for that person? Like what's going on there?
Yeah. How do we get there? Well, let me back us up a little bit around the corner back where we used to be, and we'll come full circle.
Cool.
Let's presume, and I'm building this based on the real story of a client that I currently have. But let's presume we're college age. We're out of college age. We're 22, 23 years old. And we have a friend group, and we have been ride or die besties all the way through college. We've done it all together. We've laughed together. We've cried together. We've done things we shouldn't do together. We've gone places together. We have been together. And when the college experience is over, and maybe a couple of them stick around for postgraduate work, and others head back home or wherever they're going to go. And over the next several years, or 2 or 3 years, maybe, there ends up being a lot of conflict in this friend group because they are experiencing different things, and not all of them are still attached at the hip 24/7. And they still are expecting the same result from the people that were their besties in their hip pocket for 5 years,
Hmm.
and they're 500 miles away.
Yeah.
So, can you be available? Yeah. Can you be as available? No.
No.
So, if the expectation is that you're going to be just as available to me when I'm going through it now as you were when we were in that other phase of life, and if you don't, I don't think you've been a very good friend.
Hmm.
We've got a conflict. We've got a problem. Because here's what's happening. At that point of life, people are looking for their station in life. Okay. They're looking for where they need to be, what they want to do with their lives. And that's going to require change and growth in every single one of them.
Yeah.
So this client asked me, and I was delighted to hear the question probably a year and a half ago, as this was beginning to get dramatic and extraordinarily histrionic,
Mm.
a lot of drama. And it's all girls. Okay.
Had to throw that in.
It's just an observation,
Yeah,
what I
well, I've
gotta
got the
do.
same one. Yeah, I know.
But as this began to form itself into a pattern, she asked me the question one day. She said, how do you think people grow out of relationships at this point in life? And I thought, that's pretty observant for someone at your point in life.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a
As
good.
I grow, do I grow out of what were relationship I thought I couldn't live without only 2 or 3 years ago?
Hmm.
Am I growing out of it to the point that it may not even be a regular factor in my life on a daily basis? And the answer is unequivocally, absolutely yes.
Hmm.
At that point in life, with those things in play, growing out of relationships, growing out of responsibilities of going to school, growing out of expectations of not having very high expectations or people not having high expectations of us because we're just that age.
Right.
We're growing out of that and we're becoming qualified, responsible human beings that actually are carrying the mantle of being an adult rather than just being called one because we passed a certain age.
Right.
And then we are all looking for that place in life where we say, I'm going to slow down long enough to take a breath to see who now I join my life with to go the rest of the way.
Hmm.
Now, see, I think it's a big mistake when people are still bouncing around in these relationships and they're not sure at all about what they want their lives to look like in the coming years, maybe the next 5 to 7 years. And they get heavily relationally involved romantically and they get married and neither one of them have a clue about where they are, where they want to be, and what they want to do.
Hmm.
So when they start having those conversations and they don't match up, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And the reason I go around that long curve to get to the question you asked is because I think we need to use that part of ourselves up, literally. We need to expend that energy in that place in life, in that space, so that we're willing to sit down, slow down, take the breath, and look around and say, I need to think about relationships in a more mature way.
Mm.
I need to think about relationships, a relationship with a person that I want to spend the rest of my life with, for whom I am willing to make changes and who will also need to make their own.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to stop the bus if I don't necessarily like what I see.
Hmm.
I'm going to stay on the bus. We'll walk through it, we'll work through it. It may be hurtful, it may be disappointing in some ways, but I was at a point in my life where I could make a mature enough decision about this person that I can stick with them
Hmm.
as growth needs to happen for both of us.
Yeah.
I want with all of my heart, more than anything in the world, to see my partner, my spouse, blossom, grow into what she has always dreamt of, what God has in store for her. And you know what? Sometimes that goes against what I thought it would look like.
Hmm.
Who am I to stand in the way of somebody else's growth because of my own closed mind?
Yeah. Ugh. That's pretty powerful. To think about it like that, you've made a decision that in the marriage transformation program that we have them read this book, and the last section of it is called Nine Lies That'll Destroy Your Marriage, but it's three parts, and the last part is about win-win problem solving. And well, it's really, really smart. They talk about having a no losers policy.
Yeah.
And oh, it's so good. That my husband and I have found that just to be so life-changing. That if it's a lose for him, I lose and the marriage loses. Like we've accepted that principle as a core value of how we do marriage, and it's been life-changing.
A
And
win for one is a loss for all.
exactly. So we don't do compromise. We do win-win-win. I want to win, I want him to win, and we want the marriage to win. And if somebody's got to lose in there, we don't know what the solution is then. And sometimes God changes somebody's heart about what they actually want. That's different. That's not compromise. It's more of a collaborative kind of thing where you're joining up to solve a problem, but you're as for your partner as you are for yourself. And usually, I don't know about you, but I've been so selfish. I don't care what they want. I want what I want, you know? It'd be nice if we came into marriage with that kind of mindset. And I think that's what God tries to get across to us about the unity and the one flesh. And that's that concept. And he's even very specific with men, treat your wife as your own body, like, hello, it's a no loser policy. Come on. But we miss it.
Yeah.
And we get out there and would you rather be right? And unfortunately, that's true. And I think that's what's going on with these people that are really close-minded is they, and I've asked that question, you know, would you rather be right or do you want your marriage to work? Like, are you open to something different than what you're doing?
Yeah. I classified a group of people a while ago, and I want to be very transparent. I was one of those that stepped into a relationship that ended up in a marriage long before I was actually mature enough to handle it.
Mhm.
And that, the damage and the mistakes from early days carried itself on,
Mhm.
you know, for over a decade,
Mhm.
to the point that the changes that needed to have happened in that marriage were probably 180 degrees different than my anticipation and my expectation. And my lack of maturity was unable to see that.
Oh, sure.
So that those decisions in the early 20s ended up in a marriage and then ultimately ended up in a divorce. That, there's no value in going back and trying to say, could it have, would it have, should it have?
Right.
It's in the past.
Yep.
But going back and learning, there's the sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Going back and learning, and I'm not saying that this happened immediately after the divorce. It was actually some time later
Yeah.
before I was able to see a lot of the truth in my own thoughts, actions, and behaviors as a very young adult. So I'm not throwing stones.
Well, I
I'm,
think
I'm
all of us have
talking
to go
about a
through that.
reality.
Yeah, like that's just like I think it's astonishing people get married and stay married at all, given the the garbage that we do to each other when we're young, and certainly there's different levels of maturity for sure. I look at my son, he's 29, my oldest son is, and they've been married almost 10 years or something crazy like that. They got married really young, and they've done great. I don't think that's typical though. I really don't. But they do a lot of things really, really well. And I always say that my daughter-in-law is the best thing that's ever happened to him. Um,
No doubt.
yeah, no kidding. But to your point, that age group that's an age where we're all learning, right? I went through a couple of engagements. There's, all of us have some history, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you figure it out with the person you're with, and sometimes you don't. Hopefully, we can do better when we get more wisdom. And I really appreciate some of the young people in my life that, ask opinions before they tie the knot. You know, that's good to do.
Yeah.
Um, But, to your point, we're not labeling an entire generation at all. I think we all make some of our really greatest mistakes when we're young. And then we make some other really good ones when we're immature, which can happen at any age.
Yes. Yes, there's a very, very definitive difference between youth and immaturity. Now,
Mhm.
they have a lot to do with one another, but they're not the same thing.
Right.
And that choice to marry at 20, you know, we're talking 6, 7 years before my frontal lobe is even completely developed, making a decision that presumably is going to affect the rest of my life. Oh, it still affects the rest of my life, but
Uh,
that's the rest of my life,
yep.
and literally by the calendar, the day or maybe the week that my frontal lobe was fully developed, you know, spawned a child, which was the next
Hmm.
best decision. It was a
Yeah.
great decision. It was. But, it, we, I think a lot of times we think we're grown up because we understand the processes. We know what the boxes are that have to
Mhm.
be checked. And so we presume the role of a grown up. I call it playing house.
Oh, geez.
We play house.
Yeah.
But when things get real, it's not playing anymore.
Right.
And that's what causes, I think, so many young couples to get stuck and be unable to grow either individually or as a couple
Mm.
because of that stuckness. And because, being open minded, I think, is attributed to maturity,
Yeah, I
becoming
agree.
open minded. I'm not sure
Yeah.
any of us are open minded when we're younger. And a lot of people never change.
Yeah.
But other people see that. What did my mother used to say? You need to let Jesus handle this because if you do, somebody's going to jail. Okay. Well, when
I
that's
like,
happened to us enough times that we
yeah.
realize our way isn't the best way,
Yeah.
that's when we start becoming a bit more humble.
Hmm.
That's when we start becoming a bit more open minded and, start seeing the big picture instead of just that narrow slice uh, that are between the two blinders that we
Hmm.
have on as we come out of adolescence.
Yeah. When Thomas Nelson picked up the Respect Dare back in 2010 or 2011, anyway, I remember being so excited because Dr. Kevin Leman had endorsed the book, Shawnee Feldhahn had, and I went to bed on a Saturday night and I was praying. I was like, Lord, help me stay humble. Don't let me think this is about me, that I know this is your work. I know you're doing this thing. So Sunday morning, I go to the church we've been going to for, 15 years. And I walk into the bathroom and I'm like, oh, they painted in here. And then, and we did vacation Bible school. I was there 2, 3 times a week for different meetings. So I knew the church pretty well. And I'm like, huh, I didn't realize they painted in here. And then there's a dude at the sink. And here's my thought I had. It's like, oh, looks like Joe went in the wrong bathroom. That's how arrogant I was. And then he looks at me and his eyes get bigger. And then I see the urinals and I went, oh, it's me. So I come running out of the bathroom and I made a little bit of a spectacle of myself. And I saw a friend of mine and I shouted her name. She's like, what are you doing in the men's room? I'm like, I don't know. And the tampon I had in my pocket fell on the floor.
Oh, heavenly,
There's,
could it get
I
worse?
know, right? And there's 30 people around. I know all of them really well.
Oh, no,
It just,
that's
and
good.
I was like, okay. And so I flush completely red. And she's like, just stand here and stop making noise. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Now bring attention to yourself here.
Yeah. And she said, it's okay. It's okay. We all get humbled. And I was like, oh, I'm not praying for that again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not really what I meant, Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't what I meant. But it's a great story. Like it cost me nothing to talk about it now. I just about half died. But the neat thing about that is that that's how God chisels away at pride, is he
Hmm.
allows embarrassing moments, and then what are you going to do with that? Right? And so he and I had a lot of dialogue around all of that and the thoughts that I had and how arrogant I actually was. It was just, I was astonishingly arrogant. Like, come on. And he totally totally orchestrated that. So that's, when you look at, and I'm not going to say I don't pray for being humble. I think we should, even though it'll be ugly. Like, I'll just warn you of that. But it is the
Yeah.
absolute best way to connect with people and to have real, transparent, vulnerable relationships because your pride is not in the way. And that's the enemy's calling card 100% of
Hmm.
the time.
It's the antithesis of understanding that the two realities in life are death and taxes.
Mm.
And it's the two realities in your spiritual life is if you ask God for patience or
You get
humility,
pregnant.
you're going to get lots of opportunities
Yeah.
to have that. It's funny you say that because everybody has their own Walmart, whether it's a Walmart or not. For me, it's a Walmart. The Walmart that you go to when you need to go to Walmart, and so it is a big surprise when you go to Walmart somewhere else. It may be the next town over or two states away.
Mhm.
And you think to yourself as you walk in, I need to go to the restroom. And you turn left or right, depending on which side you go in, because it's always in the middle, in the front.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you walk into the wrong restroom because they have them opposite of how your Walmart is.
This sounds like an
Men's on the
experience
left,
you've
women on the
had.
right.
You
Yeah.
did this.
Oh, more than once. I've just
Oh,
blindly walked into what is the men's restroom at my Walmart.
okay, okay.
Why can't they just build them all the same?
I know, right? They just mess with you. Like,
I
yeah.
know. But I think that those opportunities for humility are all around. But the first thing that we do when we're faced with one is look for somebody to blame.
Hmm.
At least I do.
Yep.
My first thought is not what can I learn here? What do I need to change? My first is who did this to me? And so that's something that, you know, approaching my mid 60s that I'm still working on.
Oh, till we die. Like, that's normal Christian living where we tame our thoughts to the mind of Christ, the heart of God. His ways are so much higher than ours.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for kicking this around with me today.
It's been
Uh,
a kick. I mean,
yeah,
a pleasure. And yeah,
something. So, if you found any value here today in terms of, dealing with your person that's stuck, or maybe it's you, who knows? Are you humble? That's a great question, right? Can you be right or can you not be right? That's a better question. Can you choose to be open to the fact that you don't know? And does not knowing mean that you would probably know, but like, is there arrogance there? I'm 100% sure there's stuff you don't know. You're listening to a podcast on marriage stuff because your marriage is struggling. That means there's stuff you don't know. And there's stuff I didn't know either. And, we heard Kyle talk specifically about some things he didn't know today. I just want to encourage you. You're not alone in this. There's a beautiful scripture that God humbles the proud, right?
mm,
Yeah, this is a brutal one. Um, but in the spaces where we're humble, he lifts us up also. So reach out. You can get a hold of Kyle if you want to live in the great state of Texas and you want to meet with him. It's Kyle Hargrove, KYLEHARGROVE, LPC at gmail.com. Just grab a hold of him and set up an appointment, and he can help you navigate some of these spaces because you don't have to stay stuck. Stay tuned, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like and share the video, maybe with your person that's proud. I don't know. That probably just botched it for you doing that, but seriously, share it. Help us get the word out, and we'll go from there. Have a great rest of your day.